Hi everyone, welcome to Practical Research 2. For our first lesson, we will be discussing the nature of inquiry and research. I am Mr. Jaylord Bartolome, a faculty of Northeastern Integrated School of San Agustin Incorporated, Senior High School Department. Now, let's begin. In this age of information, possession of necessary skills and acquisition of knowledge has already become a claimant. People of today become more curious and complex with the way they deal with life. Our environment changes speedily at a very fast pace. Thus, people need to reinvent themselves to easily cope with the demand of the ever-changing society and not to be left behind. Let us first discuss or review your practical research 1. What is research? And the characteristics of research. Now, what is research? Research is the acquisition of new knowledge through a purposive, organized, and designed program of activities. It seeks to find the answer to the problem and generate new information for a better understanding of the concepts under study. Research may either be basic or applied depending on the aims of researcher. Basic research is conducted solely to cope up with a new knowledge or to have an in-depth understanding of a subject for its own sake. It is also referred to practical varieties of research activity. I repeat, it also refers to the practical varieties of research activity. Research is a process of investigation, an examination of a subject from different point of views. It's not just a trip to the library to pick up a stack of materials or picking the first five hits from a computer search. Research is a hunt for the truth. It is getting to know a subject by reading up on it, reflecting, playing with the ideas, choosing the ideas that interest you, and following up on them. Research is the way you educate yourself, and this definition is from the Online Library Learning Center in the year 2017. Research is simply the way people solve the knotty problems in their attempt to push back from the frontier of human ignorance. We are done with the definition of research. Now, let's move on to its characteristics. Liddy 1974 enumerates some basic characteristics of research. He says that research has 7 discrete characteristics which appear sequentially. Every research is familiar with these steps, which taken together comprise the approach to the discovery of truth, which we call the research. Researcher begins with a question in the mind of the researcher, and after that, the researcher requires a plan. After a plan, the research demands a clear statement of the problem. Then that statement of the problem or research deals with the main problem through the sub-problems. Then, the research seeks direction through appropriate hypotheses and deals with facts and their meanings, and go back to the question, plan, statement of the problem, sub-problems, hypotheses, facts, and meanings that makes a research circular. Another characteristic of research are empirical. When we say empirical, it is based on observation and experimentation on theories. Systematic. Systematic meaning to say research follows orderly and sequentially procedures like what we had discussed on Practical Research 1. Controlled. All variables except those that are tested or experimented upon are kept constant. Research also employs hypotheses. It guides the investigation process. Research is analytical. There is a critical analysis of all data used so that there is no error in their interpretation. Another is it is objective, unbiased, and logical. All findings are locally based on the observation and experimentation on theories or based on empirical. And lastly, it employs quantitative or statistical method. Data are transformed into numerical measures and are treated statistically. Now that we are done with the review of our practical research 1, let's move on to our first lesson, and that is the nature of inquiry and research. This lesson is composed of the definitions of research, its characteristics, type, strength, and weaknesses of quantitative research, importance of research across fields, and the nature of variables. Let us talk about what is quantitative research. Quantitative research, also known as the empirical research, is a type of inquiry where relations are established through the collection of numerical data which are analyzed and derive generalization. It is used to quantify the problems by way of generating numerical data that can be transformed into usable statistics. It is used to quantify attitudes, opinions, behaviors, and other defined variables and generalized result from a larger sample population. Quantitative research specifically refers to a test or experiments that yields quantifiable values that can be generalized using statistics, figures, and mathematical models to provide information that may be used in decision making. This aims to establish or validate relationships and to develop generalization from the relationship. It is usually more objective as the accumulated data is submitted to a statistical analysis. Quantitative research is perhaps the simpler to define and identify. The data procedure is always numerical, and they are analyzed using mathematical and statistical methods. If there are no numbers involved, then it is not quantitative research. Now, let's move on to the characteristics, types, strengths, and weaknesses of quantitative research. Now, quantitative research is a formal, objective, and a systematic process for obtaining quantifiable information about the world. It is presented in numerical forms and analyzed using statistics. It is used to describe and to test relationship. It is also used to examine the cause and effect of a variable. In simple terms, quantitative research is concerned with numbers, statistics, and the relationship between events or variables. It is specifically concerned with statistical information, also known as the data. Since this type of research requires use of mathematical analysis in the investigation of what is being observed, it is expected that the data collected must be numbers. And finally, data collected must be analyzed using statistics. There are 4 basic types of quantitative research. It is the survey or the descriptive, correlational, causal comparative, and experimental. We will need, or the researchers will need to decide which one is most appropriate for your research questions. Now, let us first define these four types of quantitative research. When we say survey, survey or descriptive research uses interview questionnaires and sampling polls to get a sense of behavior with intense precision. It allows the researchers to judge behavior and then presents the findings in an accurate way, while correlational research tests for the relationship between two variables. It is considered or it is conducted to explain a noticed occurrence. For the causal comparative research look to uncover a cause and effect relationship. This research is not conducted between two groups on each other. Rather than look solely for a statistical relationship between two variables, it tries to identify specifically how the different groups are affected by the same circumstances, and this type of research involves the comparison, from the word itself comparative, the comparison and attempts to establish the cause and effect relationship among variables. And lastly, we have the experimental. Experimental research uses the scientific method to establish the cause and effect relationship among a group of variables that makes up the study. Now let us compare the four. When we are talking about this surveyed or descriptive research, the key focus and control variables are observational, describe what is, and the variable is not controlled. There is no intervention applied in survey or descriptive research. While the common study designs are comparative descriptive design, cross-sectional designs, and longitudinal designs. While in correlational research, this explores and observes the relationship among variables, but the variables are not controlled, just like in survey descriptive research. The intervention applied is, or there is no intervention applied in correlational research. The common study design is descriptive correlation design, predictive design, and model testing designs, while causal comparative research tests for causality with the suboptimal and variable control. Independent variables are not manipulated. There is an intervention applied in this type of research. The common study designs are the pre- and post-test design, post-test only design, and the interrupted time series design. And lastly, we have here the experimental. Experimental research are tests causality with optimal variable control. Independent variable is not manipulated, but there is an intervention applied. The common study is classic experimental design, randomized design, and crossover design, and of course, the nested design. Quantitative research is not perfect model, and in investigating for it has its share of weakness other than its strength. Now let's have this strength of quantitative research. The data collection using quantitative research is relatively faster and easier to do. It is especially useful given a large sample of population or large number of sample or population, because it could speedily generate accurate, precise, and credible results. Data analysis is done using a data or statistical software, which is proven more effective in validating hypotheses and theories. The results are more objective and are free from personal bias of the researcher because quantitative research uses the statistical tool or a statistical software. The sample are randomly selected and are not in a way known or related to the researcher. These factors makes the quantitative research result more credible and reliable with people in authority. The study is also replicable, and the instrument used can be reused for further researchers in the different fields of context. The hypothesis is given a statistical analysis for the result so that a comprehensive answer is reached and the result can be legitimately discussed and published. Quantitative research is also filters out the external factors if properly designed, and so the result gained is real and unbiased. Aside from these strengths of quantitative research, we have the weaknesses. The statistical aspect of quantitative research may be too technical for average readers to comprehend. Another critique about quantitative research design is its too much emphasis on the statistical significance, disregarding the importance of the effects involved in the study. The result might be too abstract and extensive for direct application to local conditions and personage. Result of the study may also be too limited as they only provide numeric interpretations rather than detailed narrative accounts of the individual's insight. Quantitative research design is also tends to generate only provide or unproved result, with there being very little room for gray areas and uncertainty. Now let us move on to the importance of research across fields. Quantitative research is a type of research that is widely used in natural sciences, mathematical sciences, and social sciences. These fields use quantitative research for many reasons, which may be a combination of any of the following reasons. First one, it is more reliable and objective. The second one, it can use statistics and generalize a finding. It also often reduces the restructures and restructures a complex problem to a limited number of variables. It looks a relationship between variables and can establish cause and effect in highly controlled circumstances. It tests theories or hypotheses. Quantitative research also assumes a sample is representative of the whole population, and subjectivity of research in methodology is recognized less, and it is less detailed than or as compared to the qualitative data. And this is according to the importance of quantitative research in the year 2017. Quantitative research has also many applications in medical fields. In clinical research trial, some common quantitative limits include pathology, cardiology, and physical measurements. Blood level contains a measurable amount of white and red blood cells and electrolytes. Rather than physical counting each sample, the data collected process is automated using a computer. This increases the accuracy and precision of the result and promoted consistency. Quantitative research can also be applied in household census being conducted by the Philippine Statistics Authority or the PSA to determine the number of residents in every household in the entire Philippines. Quantitative research approach is also most beneficial in market research to determine customer satisfaction or dissatisfaction. The result of this study will help businessmen and entrepreneurs shape the future direction of their business, and of course in education. A quantitative research in the student's academic performance rating may be a good indicator as to which of the subject or the courses is most liked or disliked by the students. The students' ranking based on their academic performance are also easily accessible using the computer software. This and a lot more only proves that it in almost every facet of life, quantitative research is very much evident. Now let's have the nature of variables. Research cannot be possible without considering measures or measurable factors that are subject to change due to certain conditions or situations. Anything that can change in research due to circumstances is called variable. One of the first terms that you can encounter in doing research is the word variable. Failure to understand the meaning of and the usefulness of variable in your study will prevent you from doing your good research. A variable is a measurable characteristics that varies. It may change from group to group, person to person, or even which one person over time. This is according to the research methods planning variable in 2017. The word variable is derived from the root word vary, meaning changing in amount, volume, number, form, nature, or type. Many variables exist in research. However, it is extremely difficult to account for all of them because what can be considered as a variable is one study may not necessarily be a variable in another study. The research variable, of course, of any scientific experiment or research process are factors that can be manipulated and measured. Any factors that can be take on different values in a scientific variables and influences the outcomes of the experimental research. A variable is anything that varies or changes in life. Variables can or take on two or more values because variables represented a quality that can exhibit differences in values. Usually, magnitude or strength. It may be said that a variable generally is anything that may assume different numerical or categorical values. Once you begin to look for them, you will see the variables anywhere. Now, let's have the types of variables. We have the independent, the dependent, categorical variable, continuous variable, moderating variable, intervening, and of course the extraneous variable. So let's have first the independent variable. All researchers have at least two types of variables, which is the independent and the dependent variable. The independent variable or the input variable is a probable cause of an event. It is independent of everything that transpires during the experiment because once it is selected, it is not easily changed or it does not easily change. It is the variable that is controlled by the researcher since he may manipulate to determine if it will affect changes in the dependent variable. On the other hand, the dependent variable is the outcome variable, or the outcome variable is the outcome of the study. It is affected by the independent variable. It changes as a result, or it changes because of the modification made on the independent variable. It is something that depends on other factors. Now, what is the relationship between the two? The challenge for researchers is to be able to determine the relationships between the independent and the dependent variable, such that if the independent variable is changed, then the researcher will be able to accurately predict how the dependent variable will change. The other relationship can be traced from its term independent and dependent, referring to the relationship between these two variables. The terms have meaning only with respect to each other. In the case of the dependent variable, its value or behavior is considered dependent to an extent upon the values of the dependent variable, but not the other way around. That is why it is considered dependent. The independent variable, on the other hand, is truly independent from the dependent variable. Now, the importance of dependent and independent variable is that they guide the researchers to pursue their studies with maximum curiosity. Dependent and independent variables are important because they drive the research process. As defined earlier, a variable or variable as opposed to a constant is simply anything that can vary, and that many researchers consistently look at the relationship between these two variables. While the variation of an independent variable will influence the variation of the dependent variable. Both variables, the independent and dependent variable, give the study a focus. The dependent and independent variables are also important because they determine the cause and effect in research. Although not all independent and dependent variables are causal related variables, the notion of cause and effects can help clarify the term independence in the independent variable and dependence in the dependent variable. Now let's have the categorical variable. Categorical variable are also known as discrete or qualitative variables. It can be further categorized either normal, ordinal, or dichotomous. When we say normal variables are variables that have two or more categories but which do not have an intrinsic order. Ordinal variables are variables that have two or more categories, just like other nominal variables, only the categories can also be ordered or ranked. While here in the dichotomous variables are nominal variables which have only two categories or levels. How about the continuous? Continuous variable, on the other hand, are also known as the quantitative variables. It can be further recognized as either interval or ratio. Now, let's digest these two. Interval variables are variables for which either central characteristics is that they can be measured along a continuum and they have a numerical value, while a ratio variable are interval variables but with the added conditions that 0 of the measurement indicates that there is a none of the variable. Let's move on to the moderating other types of variable or other variables, which is the moderating, interval, and extraneous variable. Let's have first moderating variable. A moderating variable is one that has a strong contingent effect on the independent variable-dependent variable relationship. That is, the presence of the third variable or this moderating variable modifies the original relationship between the independent and the dependent variable. While intervening variable, a basic cause and effect or causal relationship requires only independent variable. A third party type of variable, the intervening variable, appears in more complex causal relationship. It comes between the independent and dependent variable and shows the link or mechanism between them. Advances in knowledge depends not only on documenting cause and effect relationship but also on specifying the mechanisms that account for the causal relationship. In a sense, the intervening variable acts as a dependent variable with respect to independent variable and acts as dependent variable towards the dependent variable. Now, lastly, we have the extraneous variables. An almost infinite number of extraneous variables exist might conceivably affects a given relation. Some can be treated as independent or moderating, but most either be assumed or excluded from the study. Such variable or these extraneous variables must be identified by the researchers. To identify the relationship between the independent and dependent variables, the effect of the extraneous variable may have to be controlled. This is necessary if we are conducting an experiment where the effect of the confounding factors must be controlled. Now, what is this confounding factor? When we say confounding factor, this is just another term used for the extraneous variable. Now, let's have some exercises. Let's have some exercises. Number 1. Okay, just answer it on your own. Number 1. Measuring the results of a horse race is an example of what type of measurement? Is it interval, ordinal, nominal, or ratio? Okay, you answer it on your own. Next, number 2. The changes that occurs in an experiment that are directly caused by the experimenter are called, is it independent variable, dependent variable, intervening variable, or controlled variable? Answer it now. Let's have the third one. Which of the following variable is the same for all groups of experiment? Is it the control variable, random variable, independent variable, or the dependent variable? Go. Number 4. Which level of measurement deals with a true zero? Is it ordinal, interval, nominal, or ratio? Just choose one. Number 5. Which of the following choices is not type of variable? Is it the control, the independent, placebo or placebo, or the random? What's your answer? Number 6. Measuring the result of a horse race is an example of interval, ordinal, nominal, or ratio. I think this one is repeated. Anyway, just answer it. And lastly, we have number 7. Which level of measurement is ranked numerically as well as having meaningful distances between numbers? Is it interval, ordinal, nominal, or ratio? Now that's all for today. Thank you for listening, and please like and subscribe to my channel, and don't forget to hit the bell button for you to notify if ever I will upload some of the videos. Thank you. Bye.